another Tom, Dick, or Dave. These are our Frenzy Faves.
Today, our Frenzy Faves is a favorite Twilight Zone episode.
So, Chris, tell us about the episode we're looking at today.
Thank you, Professor. Today, we're looking at an episode entitled The Obsolete Man. This was from Season 2, Episode 29. Directed by Elliot Silverstein, written by Rod Serling, with the original air date of June 2nd, 1961. For our cast, we have Burgess Meredith as Romeny Wordsworth, Fritz Weaver as the Chancellor, and Joseph Ellick as Subburton. Prof, can you please enlighten myself and the listeners about the Obsolete Man?
You betcha. A man, Burgess Meredith, is brought in front of a tribunal, and his name is Wordsworth, Romeny. So, Romeny Wordsworth. The Chancellor says he is accused of being obsolete. Now, they apparently live in kind of a post-fascist society, you know, where they talk about Hitler and Stalin as like amateurs. And everyone here must now earn their keep. And Wordsworth is a librarian. And since books contain truths, and truth is against the government, librarians are obsolete, and he's condemned to death within 48 hours. But he can choose the method. He asks a couple of questions. One, can he arrange his death with one person in secret? And, you know, just I'll tell them how I want to die, and they'll arrange it, and boom. And they say, yeah, that's not a problem. As long as it's in 48 hours, fine. And he says he also wants it televised, which is also approved. They used to televise, you know, back during the revolution, they used to televise executions all the time. So this is just one more. We'll set it up. So they have some conversations about the worth of humans. And then, they go off, and Wordsworth goes to his apartment. Now, later, you know, he's in his apartment, he's reading his books, and the Chancellor arrives. And they fuss about the worth of humans, and Wordsworth tells the Chancellor that he's been chosen to be killed by a bomb right here in his apartment. And they talk, oh, good way to die, and when's it going to be done, and blah, blah, blah. And then the Chancellor goes to leave, and oh, by the way, the door's locked, and the Chancellor can't get out, and no one's around to save him because everybody knows a bomb's going off. So the minutes tick away and the time of the explosion nears. Wordsworth reads the Bible as the Chancellor is trying to hold himself together, but he's kind of quietly freaking out. Finally, the Chancellor, as they get really close to the time, the Chancellor begs to be released. And Wordsworth decides, okay, I'll let you go just before the bomb explodes. So the Chancellor has been saved. But the next day, the Chancellor is taken to his own tribunal. He begged for his life, so he is weak and now obsolete. Bum, bum, bum. All right, a couple of things. First of all, I love Burgess Meredith. He's really good. He's just in everything. I just think he's fantastic. This episode seemed a little forced and talky to me, though. There's a couple, I doubt very much that they would have allowed this condemned guy to choose his death like this, and for the Chancellor just to show up at his house, stumbling into his trap. And this is a very dialogue heavy episode about the value of man apart from what he can accomplish, just the inherent value of human beings. And there's also a lot of talk about the historical failures of fascism. But I don't think we heard anything new. It's a little repetitive. And I think it was just more talking than action. One of the things that I did find, particularly when they were doing the tribunal, is the shapes of where the Chancellor was sitting is way up high on a dais, and there's a guy way below, and it's shot in kind of a German expressionistic way. And I thought that was really cool. It wasn't consistent throughout the episode. It wasn't a repetitive motif or anything that I picked up. But I thought there were a couple of cool, visual shots where perspective was a little skewed. And I really like that. So, Chris, what was your opinion on The Obsolete Man?
Thanks, Prof. Great observation. I want to immediately circle back to the last thing you said with respect to this, because I think that was unique and it wasn't in my notes. But as often as I've watched this episode over the years, it's such a unique point where we have like the real elongated table.
Yeah.
We have everybody sort of clad in the same way. We have this one person really sitting in an insanely high perch passing judgment. And I think some of the way it was shot is sort of telling. And I really wanted to note that, but I didn't. And I'm glad you did. So I appreciate that. As per usual, we'll get some trivia out of the way. Fritz Weaver, a talented actor, also appeared in episodes of many 60s and 70s television, including Hawaii Five-0. Also appeared in another Twilight episode called Third from the Sun, and perhaps we'll discuss that down the road at some point. Burgess Meredith, of course, we talked about numerous times. I think this is one of his 4 appearances, so here we go. I saw this for the first time kind of being left confused because as a child, I didn't know what a totalitarian state was. I really didn't know what fascism or anything like that was. I came for Twilight Zone to see something with twist endings. And while we had something of a twist ending here, I really didn't know what the stakes were and how they were involved. Later, as I grew older, I've had to come an appreciation and a fondness for this episode. And it sort of hit me a little bit later. So for that, I'm very, very appreciative with respect to Serling and the earnestness that he puts in the script. As with the beginning and closing, Serling talks in such a way with the introduction and with the closing that this sort of sits home with him. And this seems to strike a nerve with him with respect to the perception and where a society can go if it's not left unchecked. And I think it was really, really personal. I'll have to watch it again, but I don't even think he's got his typical cigarette in his hand when he's delivering this one. He's looking directly at the camera, and this really, really is addressing you, the viewers, the audience, as this means something to him. The performances are really good. Burgess Meredith is outstanding. There's a calmness and demeanor to him as he's resigned to his fate. And he speaks and reads the Bible in such a way that I wouldn't mind having a recording of just listening to Burgess Meredith recite the Bible. I think he does it in such a way where the words echo and they ring true. And there's just such a delight to have him in this performance. And I'm so glad that he did this particular role. Fritz Weaver as the authoritarian figure is really, really good in this. There's a smugness to him. There's this persona that he's a little above everything. And then we get it where we turn the screw, and then he gets his comeuppance, and then we find he's obsolete, and now he's sort of deemed irrelevant, and now he must pay the price of their respective society. I liked that because I think there's moments where I think people have certain positions of authority, earned or not, have or not, passed judgment or not. Yet now in turn they get their own, and now they have to die by the sword that they had adhered to prior to this. And I really think that's telling. And I kind of I like to identify with that in a weird way. I think it grew over time as an episode that I really, really liked. Is it going to make a top 10 list of people's favorites? I don't know. I don't think so. It would certainly wouldn't maybe make a top 5 or top 10, but I think it's going to be in the conversation of one of the better episodes, at least for me personally. I think the performances were earnest. I think there's an earnestness to what Serling is trying to say here. I'm asking myself, did it come off as too preachy or a little too spot on, kind of swinging back to, I think, trying to what you had. And I can see it. I can see it from a certain point of view, but I think the overall tone and the message lets me give it a pass with any heavy-handedness it might be conveying or projected on the screen. I think the performances sell it. I think the dialogue sells it. And I think the script sells it a little more, just for me to put the pendulum back the other way towards an appreciation with this and not necessarily having it be a knock. So much more in a half hour that is conveyed with this that I thought was really, really effective. I like this episode. It's maybe not one of like the all-time best ones, but I think it's worth discussing and picking apart though.
Yeah, I agree. It was interesting. It was just a little, it was more talky than it was action.
Agreed.
All right. So The Obsolete Man was one of our favorite Twilight Zone episodes.
Just are our friends.